Hi, I'm Teva, the founder of Snazzy Jars. This video will go into depth into how this business will affect myself and the environment. We will go over their product description, labor and production, finances, and how this business affects the environment. Let's start with the product. The goal of Snazzy Jars is for the customers to spruce up their space with designs that make them happy. At Snazzy Jars, the goal is to work with the designer to make the product that the customer will enjoy. You can choose a jar that is pre-made from the selection or bring your own to get $10 off. The jars are waterproof, dishwasher safe, and generally great for all of your needs. The average price per jar is calculated as shown on this graph. As mentioned, since the customers will provide their own jar to decorate, the cost of the jar will depend on other factors. The price is calculated by the amount of time spent on it, with an additional fee of 10% of the hourly wage in order to work towards making a profit, and another 10% towards the price of materials. Overall, the average jar price is $18. Now, what exactly is the process of creating these jars? Well, to make them, I use the customer-provided jar or glass item and decorate it with paint pens. After deciding, planning, and finally actually decorating the jar and letting it dry, I seal it with the glass sealant so that it is dishwasher safe and so the design stays intact. The entire process usually takes around 1 hour of work to do. Now that you know about Snazzy Jars, let's talk about the finances. To figure out the amount of money I would be making over time, I used this formula. When using this formula, I'm able to find out how much I would be able to make off my business if it were a part-time job. We start off with the first day, my startup. On my first day of my small business, I would be $47.60 in debt from being unable to pay off my startup cost or expenses. After making and selling one jar, I am working off my debt. After 30 hours or a week into the part-time job, assuming I sell each jar, I would be making $466.60. 1 month in, after working 120 hours, I would be making $2,009.20. And finally, after working 1 year in this job, I would be selling over 1,000 jars and would be making $24,634 a year. Now, $24,000 a year is a substantial amount, but how exactly can I balance a part-time job as a student? If I work 30 hours a week, I can divide this time through working from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then again after school ends from 6 p.m. until 8 p.m. I can work 12 hours over the weekend, spending 6 hours making jars per day, and spending less if I balance it out over the week. It's a busy schedule, but good enough, especially if I were not a student. 4 to 6 hours of work per day is definitely not bad. And even if I did keep this up, would $24,000 a year really support me? Assuming I am a student running this business, besides restocking material, I would be making pure profit from this. I would be living a comfortable life at home, living with my family, being fed, living a more than comfortable life, saving the money I made from this business, and saving it until I graduate. But just for fun, let's see if this business would support me if I needed to pay for a cost of food, housing, utilities, and overall just living in Vancouver. Overall, this business would not support me on its own. However, since I have time to balance it on other part-time jobs on top of this small business, it could still provide me with a possibility of living a comfortable life alone in Vancouver. Now that we know the financial impact it would make on my life, let's talk about how Snazzy Jars impacts the environment, specifically the water and carbon cycle. Let's start with the water cycle. In simple terms, the water cycle is quoted as the continuous movement of water within the Earth and atmosphere. It is a complex system that includes many different processes. Liquid water evaporates into water vapor, condenses to form clouds, and precipitates back into the earth to form rain and snow. Luckily, my business does not impact the water cycle in a dramatic way. Other than special circumstances, the making of these jars uses little to no water. Since I use paint pens, there is no need for cleaning old paintbrushes, palettes, or dumping out paint water. Since I use paper towels, other than slightly wetting them, water is not used to clean the jars. And finally, when setting them with my sealant, since it's a spray and no need to clean anything, no water will be used throughout the entirety of the jar making process. So as far as the water cycle goes, my products do not impact the environment in a very negative way. Next, the carbon cycle. The carbon cycle is the recycling of carbon between living and non-living parts of the biosphere. Carbon emissions are generated through businesses' energy consumption, such as the heating and lighting generated by fossil fuels, as well as diesel used for travel, water usage, and waste disposal. In order to make my business completely carbon neutral, I will need to use natural energy sources, recycle and reuse my paper towels for cleaning, limit my water usage with paper towels, walk to get materials, restocks, and deliver to customers, and finally dispose of my materials in a way that I have complete control over. Overall, this business leaves a relatively small environmental footprint. One of the best parts about this to me is knowing that the jars being decorated are only being enhanced and reused rather than bought new as well. At this point, I feel my business is doing great at minimizing my carbon and water impact. Compared to other small businesses, I feel that it is definitely something that can be pursued and become successful. Although Snazzy Jars is primarily focused on jars, it can expand in the future to become a business that takes old items and makes them into art. I feel that especially with the interest in supporting small environmentally conscious businesses becoming a trend, Snazzy Jars definitely has a chance of being successful and expanding into a brand. Although this business still does not make as much money as most careers would working the same amount of time, it still allows me to live somewhat comfortably and pays fairly well as a side job. Overall, especially if I pursue this business on top of living as a student, Snazzy Jars would impact me positively. The money from this business would go towards post-secondary expenses and living my life in the future. I think this business idea is a great way to turn my time into money. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope you learned something and enjoyed it.